NFR podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. Today we are going to be talking about the legendary College Dropout. You know, it's crazy to think that it's been a long time since this has dropped just because it still sounds brand new to the market. It has a crazy aesthetic. And guys, let us know what your favorite song is on the College Dropout. So Lou, welcome us into the episode.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, this is a legendary album. It's Kanye's debut. And it's the album that really proved people wrong because, you know, he was at first only seen as a producer. So we're going to talk about, you know, the making of this album, all of the trials and tribulations you had to go through to get it out. And then also, you know, just the narrative of the album, our favorite songs, and just like the overall success of it because, you know, this really blew up Kanye to another level.
Okay, so let's start off the episode like this, man. I want to ask you, why do you fuck with this album so hard? Because I know, you know, it's in your top tier Kanye albums, and I think it's in a lot of people's top tier discography list for Kanye.
Yeah, it's definitely a top 3 Kanye album just because, you know, right off the gate, he showed that, you know, he's more than just a producer. And that was the whole narrative for this is that, you know, he started off, you know, in 2000 with Jay-Z producing off of Dynasty. And, as he went on, he would produce for a lot of artists off of Rockefeller Records. And, you know, his big break came when he did multiple songs off the Blueprint.
Yeah, he got his scores on the Blueprint, but even before that, I mean, when he was in Chicago, a lot of people don't know that he was actually producing for very successful artists. I think he even opened up as a DJ once for Biggie and Tupac, I believe. I think that was a real thing. I have to find the poster for that somewhere and post it on the Twitter. But regardless, his career early on was mainly producing, and I think it's where, you know, Kanye really got to, let's say, brew his skills and like really get him to a top level sort of. I would have to say like quality, maybe even more like, let's say, product, because you go through the Blueprint or even, let's say, the Dynasty, and, you know, it's all phenomenal. It's all phenomenal soul samples, and they're perfectly fit with Jay-Z's aesthetic. Not only that, but like they sold millions of records together, and he had a lot of success. But the problem was that Kanye never wanted to only stay an in-house producer for Rockefeller.
And all of the labels just didn't see him as more than a producer.
Capitol Records fucked up on him so hard, dude.
They could have signed him. Yeah, he had a meeting with them and everything, and they said no.
They told him he didn't look gangster enough, and that was another persona that, you know, Kanye didn't fit. Was people didn't understand the type of aesthetic that he was trying to reach for in the future, and he was thinking miles ahead of everyone. He's like, listen, dude, like that stuff has been done before. I'm on my own wave. And that's another big narrative with the College Dropout, is that it brings in a lot of different things that we start to see reoccurring in future hip-hop albums and future classics. You know, it was one of the first hip-hop albums where like you sit down and like not only did it have all of the guys bumping it, but it also had all the girls bumping it too. Kanye was one of the first, you know, artists to really do that.
He bridged that gap 100%.
Then talk what he did with the producing, you know, the sort of soul samples that he was bringing in, you know, like you heard Andre 3K and you heard Lauryn Hill right away, and like he was transcending that genre into new hip hop.
And he actually produced every single song off of the College Dropout. Not many people know that. And what's crazy was just, you know, Kanye's work ethic for this, just because he was crafting it for a total of 4 years. He crafted between 1999 and 2003. So he was heavy on it. And, you know, what he would do was that he would carry around a Louis Vuitton backpack with him to every studio session he went to. And he would always have his demo with him. And he would play it for people, and they liked it, but they didn't see the appeal to it. That's what it came down to. And like, Kanye wasn't happy with just being a producer because he always said how he wanted to express himself because he had so much on his mind and so much to say, and that he could have offered more than the gangsta image, just the life of an average guy, because that's what he was. He grew up in a middle-class family, and, you know, he didn't have, you know, those roots.
He didn't have the life experiences that other rappers or artists
such as 50 Cent, Ludacris, Nelly.
You know, Jay-Z, let's say Cameron, like the other guys that were popping off at that time.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at Kanye and it's a completely different aesthetic. But, I mean, it's maybe the aesthetic that the world needed because Kanye opened up so many minds to, you know, to so many different ideologies. And it all started with the College Dropout. And that's beautiful. You know, and it was also because apparently Dame Dash only signed it because they didn't want him walking to other labels to make beats for other artists.
Exactly.
You know, and Jay-Z and Dame knew the type of quality they had on their hands. You know, like they didn't. Well, at least as far as our knowledge, like they didn't try to do that with Pharrell. Like when they were doing that, they didn't try to do that with other producers. They really wanted Kanye, and they knew the type of stuff that was gonna be able to happen. So, you know, before we even like, let's say, get into the, I'm gonna have to take this off the thing, yeah. But let's say we get into like this whole thing of like, you know, what the College Dropout did for hip hop later down the years, let's say. You know, talking about the mid 2000s, because it did come out in 2003, so it was the
2004.
2004, sorry. Came out in 2004, but then after that you have still the other half of the decade. So, you know, talk to me maybe about the influence there and like how it sort of shifted the industry maybe.
Well,
right
yeah,
there.
well, the whole thing is, you know, he went away from the whole gangsta image, which was, you know, it was dominating the mainstream in hip hop. And what he did was he, you know, really bridged that gap with more conscious hip hop, more of a blend of everything, really. And that went on to influence artists like J. Cole, like Lupe Fiasco, and it really opened the doors for them just because at this point in the mid 2000s, most labels were only signing people who had that gangster rap image. So he really bridged the gap and made people, you know, more accessible to the labels. Essentially.
Yeah, a lot more artists made money because of Kanye West, and I mean, it's probably the reason why he's considered one of the greatest to ever do it, just because of that, like that fact. Like he's literally opened up every single genre. You could bend whatever you want now, and you know, you go through the College Dropout, and I mean, I read you the whole track list, and not one song sounds nearly the same.
And there's
like,
not a single weak song either.
Not only that, but like the skits aren't fantastic. You know, there's skits on there that make you think about life and that make you say like, whoa, okay, like there's really menacing things going on within, you know, people like, you know, our lives. You know what I'm trying to say? Like we're so comfortable and we're so complacent, but like the College Dropout makes you kind of like grounded. It makes you understand everything from a ground level and from a fucked up level. So, you know,
let me ask you something. Do you believe in destiny?
Sheesh. Yeah, well, I mean, fuck, man. I mean, it's definitely within music. I mean, we see the type of influence, you know, that transcends throughout the years. But I mean, destiny could be really attributed to anything besides music.
But in a general sense, do you believe in destiny?
Fuck. Man, that's a fuck. We're gonna have to get another another podcast going. No. I mean, okay, listen. I think destiny is what you want to make it at the end of the day. It's different for everyone. You know, we all have our own perceptions of reality. We all have our own shit. And I think to a certain extent, you know, you have to understand that when we're going through life, and, you know, this is actually something I learned off Kanye West. When we're going through life, we have to understand that it's our energy, our bubble, and that no one could necessarily really tell you how to do it better than you can just because you have it. And I mean, if that's the way we're living, then destiny will constantly be on our side. And another thing I believe in is that, like, you know, destiny does not have to necessarily be good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get karma both ways. And like, that's another thing that I feel as if was communicated through this album was like, yo, you're going to get the good and you're going to get the bad, because there still is a lot of talk about women, about shopping, about clothes. But, you know, there's honest songs about like working a 9 to 5 and working at a shop and, like, you know, thinking your manager thinks you stole.
And
so
the reason why I'm bringing up the whole destiny thing is just because I feel like Kanye West was destined to be more than just a producer. And even though everyone told him he couldn't do it and that he was crazy, he still went out and did it, man. He proved everyone wrong. And what's amazing too is that before the College Dropout even came out, he was telling people, I'm going to release the College Dropout, and right after that, I'm going to release Late Registration. And they're both going to be classic albums. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So I think it's more for Kanye West was to have that willpower and to follow through with it. And that's what he did.
Okay, so do you think destiny's real? Like, what
100%. I feel like destiny is real to a certain extent, but you have to have that self-belief in yourself, and you have to put your cards in order to land somewhere.
That's exactly what Kanye did too, you know, and that this whole album is that whole narrative, you know, is that whole narrative, because you look at it and it's almost as if it's someone taking it to another level. Like, you feel Kanye's blow up within the College Dropout, and this is exactly what that album is. It's the blowout, you know. So it's the blow up, excuse me, and. You know, we could sit here all day and argue what's Kanye's best album, but I mean, if you want to hear Kanye at his rawest, you go on that album. There's nothing. I
wouldn't say it's him at his rawest. I wouldn't say that. I feel like he really calculated a lot for this album just because of how many years he put in. If we're talking about his rawest album, I'd probably have to go with The Life of Pablo.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, just because it's his messiest album. It's all over the place, but it still remains focused at the same time. So in terms of rawness, I would give it to that. But I know what you're saying. He definitely. he felt free with this album.
He did, and I mean, like, he wasn't scared to talk about what was on his mind. You know, there was not nearly as many people invested in him as there is now. And, you know, talking about that, I want to talk about Kanye's success after this album, because, you know, a lot of people don't understand what this did for him and, you know, where it took to another level. So talking about that, you know, what type of success did Kanye have after this? Because Late Registration was another massive fucking hit right after, and like, it was just blow up time for him.
Yeah, what's crazy is that, you know, after this album, Kanye got 2 songs that went, you know, top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. He got Slow Jams, which was his first #1 hit song, which actually featured Jamie Foxx and Twista. And what's interesting about that is that, you know, at this time, you know, in the early 2000s, Jamie Foxx was only known as an actor. But he ran into Kanye at a house party that Jamie Foxx was throwing. And Kanye went up to him, you know, with his usual energetic energy and was like, you know, Jamie, I have a song for you. It's kind of a dance song, and, you know, Jamie Foxx thought he was kind of crazy, but they ended up making it, and it went #1.
And then they linked up again on Late Registration. So, I mean, you know, again, destiny. That destiny just aligns itself. And if you don't get Jamie Foxx's vocals on that song, I mean, it's probably not hitting the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, talking about the rest of the album, you know, you also have success in the soundtrack and in the way that it was produced and, you know, the way it was put together, because I feel as if it was also a success as far as artistry goes. Everything sounded super complete. Everything was vacuum sealed tight to a T. Like, everything was beautiful. Every sample was on point. Every feature was nice. All of the skits were really well put together. So regardless about the commercial success, it was a success as far as an album goes.
Also got 10 Grammy nominations, which was huge, man.
10 Grammy.
10 Grammy noms. I think the only album to have gotten more was To Pimp a Butterfly.
I think To Pimp a Butterfly did put up more. But listen, yeah, regardless, I mean, that's just crazy. That's,
your debut album gets 10 Grammy noms.
That's just crazy.
It sells over 400,000 copies in its first week. Like, Kanye really went from being, you know, everyone's favorite producer in the industry to everyone's favorite artist. That was kind of the transition that he made, and he did it in a perfect way. I want to ask you something else. What do you think is the main narrative? Like, what do you take away from this album in terms of messaging?
Gamble on yourself. Take the gamble. Take the gamble on yourself. Fucking do it. Just put the cards down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you feel as if you got to do something, and you feel as if that, you know, you have a bigger purpose to achieve, which I think we all do, you know, in our own respective, then do it. You know, and that's what Kanye did at the end of the day, because, as I mentioned before, this guy was only known as a fucking producer. Like, no one thought this guy was going to become a megastar. I mean, if they knew he was going to become a megastar, then everyone would have wanted to release the College Dropout. People heard that and fucking slept on it, bro. Like, imagine being Kanye West showing Jay-Z an album, and like, Jay-Z's like, nah, bro, you're not putting that out. You're like, dude, imagine how fucking defeating that sounds. And what does he do? He fucking releases a debut album like that. That got the 10 Grammy noms, and that got 2 smash hits on it that entered the top 10. I mean, there was still no rap artist, like, there was not a lot of them that were doing it like that. It's not like now how commercial the lane is. Back then, there was very few people putting up those types of numbers and, you know, that type of quality too.
Yeah.
And I mean, this guy was selling almost at, you know, this guy was probably even like doing a bit more than the Bling era and that sort of thing. So like, this guy was really fucking pushing. But, you know, take College Dropout out of his thing. Let's say he starts with Late Reg. What do you think the effect is to his discography?
I just feel like it wouldn't have been as good of an introduction to Kanye West, just because, you know, from the get-go, like you said, he showed you how, you know, you need to follow your dreams to really be successful in life. And that's what I take away from this album, is the fact that, you know, society might put constraints on you and tell you to, you know, behave a certain way and follow certain guidelines. But, you know, Kanye wanted more than just a 9 to 5, and he did what he could to get past that. And that's something that he actually, you know, discusses on Spaceship, where he, you know, talks about working at the Gap and, you know, how much he hated that shit and how he wanted to get on a spaceship and pretty much take off in terms of, you know, his passions.
And look, now he's collaborating with Gap, and he made the stock go through the roof. So
that story went full circle. Yeah.
I mean, is there any reason to believe that this is could we say that this is a top 5 album of the 2000 decade? You think that's a
you could definitely make
that
that's
argument. An argument now?
It is. It definitely is.
What would be your one argument for that being there?
Just because of, you know, the way that it's crafted. I mean, also the production. You know, Kanye brought in that chipmunk soul production, which is, you know, altering the soul vocals from, you know, songs he would take from old soul songs, old R&B songs, and he would kind of higher the pitch and kind of slow them down. And that's what made Rockefeller Records, their camp, and just many other successful artists fall in love with his production sound. It's because of the way he was spinning that up. Not only that, but just the themes he was introducing, man. Just in terms of, family life on songs like Family Business and Last Call, and just, not rapping in the following the norms of what hip hop was doing at that time. He went completely, out of left field and pulled it off.
Okay, so if Kanye never drops the College Dropout, how does hip hop look 5 years later then?
I don't know, man. We'll never know. We'll never know, just because he is the reason for so many artists' success, and he opened up a lot of doors for artists, like I said earlier, like Lupe Fiasco, like J. Cole.
Do you feel as if Kanye at any point had a misstep with this album? Like when you were going through it, did you ever see a flaw in it? Like even from the get go? Because in my opinion, I think this is a perfect 10.
Yeah, I think it is a perfect 10. One complaint that I see people having, which I totally disagree with, is that they don't like his vocals off of Through the Wire. But not many people might know that he actually had his mouth wired shut when he recorded that song.
Because of a fatal car crash. Well, a near fatal car crash.
Yeah, so he was actually recording at the studio. He dropped a fire freestyle, and what he ended up doing was, he drove home at like 2:30, and he fell asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, I know.
So he got into a head-on car crash, near fatal, ended up shattering his jaw, and only 2 weeks later, he ended up being inspired to make a song about it. And that's exactly what he did. And he recorded that song with his mouth wired shut. And it ended up being, one of the most genuine cuts off of the whole project.
Yeah, even songs like All Falls Down. I mean, like, apparently he wanted Lauryn Hill on that. And
he sampled her instead, yeah.
He sampled her instead, yeah. Like she didn't, but over here it says that he also got a Chicago native called Selena Johnson that did it as
featured,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, Selena Johnson's featured.
She was the featured and Lauryn Hill was sampled, yeah.
Man, what an iconic album, because you bring it back all the way then, it's like, who's mixing that sort of subject matter with that sort of delivery and that sort of production as well, right? I mean, it's 2004, stuff that's pumping is probably like 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying. I mean, Eminem dropped the Eminem Show a year prior to that, and then after that, like, what else is really going crazy at that point? There's nothing. I don't think there's anything on that sort of level. And also, as far as what it did for a hip hop fan base, it allowed people to have options. Especially in the way that they were listening to music, because think about the amount of people Kanye West's music. Let me rephrase that. Kanye West's music introduced people to a lot of genres, regardless if it's my age or the people that were listening to it back then. Because, I mean, I was reading something that Travis Scott was saying, and he was like, I was inspired because I did not put myself in a genre. Mm-hmm. And I feel as if that was something that he learned through people like Kanye 100%. West. And I mean, that not only had an effect on the artist themselves, but also on the fan base, because they were open to listening to new music. I mean, it wasn't every day that you were hearing a hip hop artist taking a Lauryn Hill sample or taking soul samples and make them sound like that. I mean, a lot of the production was coming from, either boom bap or like, West Coast G-funk sort of sound. And that's what people were accustomed to. And Kanye came in and introduced this whole lane, and it completely shattered everything, because looking at Late Reg, and then after that, looking at Graduation, I mean, they were two more sort of genre-bending albums.
For sure.
That really took the genre and pushed them into different places, because, the type of album sales that he was putting up at that time as well, the type of commercial success, the quality came with it. He was literally putting that type of quality and those types of ideologies in front of millions of people. And it allowed people to understand that, okay, this could be a bigger genre than what we think it is. It's not necessarily something that has to be raw, that has to be brutal. It's something that can have finesse. And it goes back to my previous point. It was also one of the first sort of albums to ever say, like, yo, your girl could bump this and you could bump this at the same time too. I mean, look at artists who have profit off of that narrative. Take that out. I mean, what do we have? You don't have Drake. We don't have The Weeknd. We don't have anyone, man. Like, you can't tell me that split would have been there. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because of the College Dropout. And I mean, when you go through the College Dropout, Lou, I want to ask you something. What's the one thing that you take away from the production? Because there's so many different aspects that go into Kanye's production, and it's such a vital part of this album. So when you're going through this track list, like, what does it make you feel on that end?
Man, it's just I just love those soul samples, man. That's what does it for me. Just because Kanye, like I said, he mastered the whole chipmunk soul thing, and it was flawless. Something I want to talk about is actually the album cover, just because of how unique it was, and the whole spin on that was mascots are usually shown to be very energetic, very charismatic, always jumping around, and he's like, what if I actually show a mascot who kind of looks bloomy and kind of depressed and is just sitting on the bleachers all alone? And that's exactly what he did, because he felt kind of like an outcast when he was in college, and that's what kind of made him drop out, was that he felt like he was following a system rather than his actual own goals in life.
Also, I like the whole symbolism with that mascot's like just sitting down, like looking depressed type stuff, because it's like you got to put on a happy face and you got to look chill, but like you always have to like sit down and like have to think about shit on a deeper level, because regardless of what we like or what we don't like, we still have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And that was a narrative I also felt was pretty prominent within this album. Is just like, dude, like sometimes you just got to take shit, and regardless of like how you take it, it's up to you, and it's in your own perspective. Because I mean, like Kanye was on Spaceships, there was also like I felt as if there was like a bit of an aura of where Kanye felt trapped, and like he felt as if his full potential was not going, and his full potential was not necessarily being fulfilled through doing that 9-to-5 job. But take that 9-to-5 job out of Kanye's life, then does he ever realize he has the potential to do what he does? Because he needed to be in that position to realize that in the first place. So like when I look at the writing like that, and I look at Kanye's like sort of I would say masterpiece like that, it blows my mind, because it gives you that double-sided meaning to the lyrics. It allows you to almost say like, oh fuck, okay, this is relatable to my life, but I could relate it to 15 different things as well. And example, a song like All Falls Down. It's one of the most beautiful and uplifting productions I've ever heard, but bro, the song's literally called All Falls Down. I mean, it's literally like Kanye's playing with your emotions.
And it's all about consumerism, right? And it makes me think of that line from Fight Club, where it's like, we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And that's exactly what Kanye was trying to say, is that we're kind of brainwashed, through advertising and through marketing, of these companies to buy products we don't necessarily need. And it's kind of a disease for a lot of people, just because they get so consumed by it and it kind of takes over their lives. And that's one of the many messages that you can take away from this album. I want to ask you something. What do you think is the best feature on the College Dropout?
Man,
one feature, man. There's 10 of them, so you have a bit of a pool to play with.
Let me pull this track list up. I don't want to fuck anything up. Let's pull the track list up. Let's get it going. I have to decide something, because I know who I have. I just like I'm in a couple of different places right now, because one thing about this feature list is that it's extremely diverse. There's a lot of different shit going on this fucking track list. So I pull this up, and already I see one that's super fucking iconic for me. It's probably Jay-Z on Never Let Me Down, bro.
Crazy verse.
That's a stupid feature for sure. I would also say Breathe In, Breathe, bro. Ludacris on Breathe In, Breathe Out is super fucking fire. I love that song. I don't know why everyone sort of trashes it as like the worst song on the album.
Yeah, I know, that is the narrative. It's not my favorite song on the album either, but it's still good. I would say Mos Def on Two Words is my favorite feature, man.
Also, probably GLC on Heavy Hitters. I mean, there's so much different diversity within this track list, and you know what? There was so many different things that you could sort of put on here, and say what's going on, and then you're like, fuck, man. There's so much different stuff and different aspects going on with the track list, because that's what Kanye wanted. Kanye likes to like literally throw you a fucking dodgeball in your face and like sees how you react to it, and then you realize how beautiful it felt, and you're like, whoa, okay, that's what's going on. Because even like that Talib Kweli feature and like that Common feature, whoa, that did some different shit. GLC on Spaceship, holy shit, that did fantastic. Selena Johnson on All Falls Down, obviously,
classic, iconic.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's literally no room for disappointment on this track list. And I mean, I get where people come from when they say like, okay, I'm not a fan of Kanye, but you can never ever say that he does not make good music.
There's a Kanye album for everyone, though, just because of how many different styles that he's dived into throughout his career. I feel like I've never heard of a hip hop fan that doesn't like Kanye West's music.
Okay,
he appeals to everyone.
Okay, so let's say we had to attribute this one album to a certain sort of persona. What do you think it would cling on?
The average, everyday suburban person to me. Just because that's exactly what Kanye represented in this time is that, people like 50 Cent, like Ludacris, Ja Rule, they were making music for people to envision a certain life, a certain lifestyle, a lifestyle that most of the consumers didn't have. But they liked thinking about it was cinematic, right?
Yeah.
But with Kanye West, it was all about like, let me relate to you. Let me kind of, bring up experiences that you're probably going through and tell you how to get out of them. Tell you how I got out of, the life that I felt trapped in. And that's exactly what he did.
If it's not for Kanye and Eminem, do we see that sort of conscious rap lane like emerge like the way it did on like the relatability sort of factor? Because you could say that they were targeting two different demographics, but they were targeting the two biggest demographics.
Yeah, definitely. I think Kanye West will always remain, one of the most relatable artists. In terms of the conscious thing, obviously there was artists doing it before him, but he definitely, brought it back into the mainstream.
Well, I'm not talking necessarily about conscious. Conscious is a very general term. I mean just more of like a, you could relate to the album on a different level, and it's the general consumer at this point. Like it's pushing the genre to different places. Like example, like, your brother would be able to listen to a full Eminem album and take something out of it, but like he's a fan of different genres. And I mean, that's not the case with 99% of the whole genre. I mean, there's very few people that could pull that off. And two of them in that time were both Eminem and Kanye. And I feel as if like Eminem talked to a certain sort of demographic that was maybe more negative and that was more underdog-ish, and that was more in that light where they didn't have much, but they were trying to make something out of nothing, where Kanye's was more the average everyday Joe being stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
And like once they were able to target those two demographics, they got hip-hop to every single person in the United States. And I mean, people do say that that's sort of like the whole wicked game of hip hop, is that, these, artists make music for the depressed and for the people that, want to like, have that lifestyle. Like that's what they're promoting. But at the end of the day, it is healing. Like, I mean, you go through the College Dropout. There is so much insight to take out of it. I mean, I was working my part-time job when I was 15, and I remember playing this album, and I was fucking mopping floors. It was a disgusting job. My boss used to make me stay and chill after hours and fucking just clean floors and clean the fridges. And I can remember just bumping Spaceships and be like, bro, there has to be more out there. Regardless of what it is. I mean, regardless of whatever the job is or whatever, it has to be better than this. And that's the same thing I felt within the College Dropout.
Kanye gives you hope on this album. That's exactly what he does, just because he shows you how he did it and how the average person can do it as well. Another thing too about this album that kind of doesn't get spoken about too much is the skits, which are actually really funny.
They're great.
And my favorite is probably the Little Jimmy skit, where
Little Jimmy's fire.
Yeah, man, where you kind of hear that narrative of like, hey, I have all these diplomas, I spent my whole life in school, but what am I really getting out of it? You know what I mean?
There's nothing. Yeah, for sure. And I even School Spirit skit too. That's really good. New workout plan. That's really good.
I would say that's my least favorite song on the album. It's still a good song. I would still bump it. It's not like
I think it
skip,
was,
but it's not a skip.
It's good.
It's
good. I mean, I would never. I'm not gonna lie. I've skipped over it, but I mean, yeah, I think it was just more of an attempt to see like if he could throw in like a little bit of a curveball and see if he could maybe profit off that lane. But I mean, the amount of quality that you got on here, even something like controversial like Jesus Walks, because that was one of the leading singles off this album, like something that was really heavy for this whole narrative.
Also a big reason why no label wanted to back him, because he was pitching them the idea of Jesus Walks, and they're like, you can't bring that religious stuff into hip hop.
Yeah, you can't bring that there, but he did, and you know what? I mean,
huge success.
Massive. People were bumping that in the club. People were literally bumping Jesus Walks in the club, and I've heard it like in our time. You know what I'm trying to say? So it was crazy to see where that went, and it was also, when he would show that apparently to anyone at all, people would be like, dude, like, put that to the side.
Exactly.
Like, stop concentrating on that. Like, get to the bag, And obviously Kanye to a certain extent, I mean, he's a fantastic entrepreneur, but if all of his money is literally made off of his creativity. I don't think this guy gives a single fuck about anything besides his creativity. And something I noticed about the Joe Rogan podcast when I was watching that whole episode is that Kanye is like it's shifty. You get what I'm trying to say, man? Like
100%.
there's like fucking 50 million different things going on at the same time with him, and like he's able to make it all cohesive and all sound so regular.
I wouldn't say it's cohesive. I feel like he doesn't.
Well,
know,
I mean, look at this album.
He doesn't know how to filter his thoughts. I think that's what it is. The place he's in right now, and it's not a bad thing. Just because.
No. But I'm not referring to like the place that he's at now. I'm
Okay.
saying like him as a person, like trying to get at least like some like, because we don't know, right? Like I've never met Kanye West, you know, but seeing what I can from interviews or like hearing his music from what we could see.
Exactly. Yeah.
This guy is the master at taking a fuckload of ideas and just a huge brain barf and making it sound beautiful and making it sound like one big Mona Lisa. And I feel that way about this album. I mean, every time you go through it, it feels like a different experience as well. Like, let's talk about how refreshing the whole cinematic value of this is. I feel like I'm watching like Superbad every time I put this album on. Like, I mean, it's giving me the comedy, but it's also giving me the reality, and it's fusing them together into one beautiful story. And then again, mix that in with Kanye's production and all the engineering that's going into this project. Dude, it's phenomenal shit. Like, how are you even going to put an album better than this? And then it brings you back to the question, like, how are you not going to put this in Kanye's top 3 albums?
Is it your favorite Kanye West album?
Man, yeah, for sure.
Number 1?
I think
Awesome.
I think it's definitely number. I've had it at number 1 for the longest out of any other album that's been there. I've had Late Reg like take it over just like for, let's say, a couple of months because I've been bumping it heavier, but it's always come back to this one. I've had MBDTF do that to me as well. I was heavy on The Life of Pablo at one point. Like, that was the album that like completely sold me on his whole discography, because I've had a rough patch with Kanye's sort of discography, especially early on.
Really? You had a rough patch with it?
It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It was just I was really more into Dr. Dre and 50 Cent and Eminem. Like, I was more into that sort of cinematic value, the stuff that was like not necessarily the most stimulating for understanding your surroundings or understanding, my surrounding, but something that had a lot of good ideologies inside mixed with, fantastic hip hop. I mean, they're two completely different cells, in my opinion, and then this also raises the question, like, could you even call Kanye West a hip hop artist anymore? You can't. You can't put fucking Kanye West in a genre.
You can't put him in any box.
You can't put him anywhere. I mean, I'll show you this album and you'll completely understand where I'm coming from. I'll show you MBDTF and then you'll really understand where I'm coming from. You could show anyone anything and they'll understand this. And I feel as if, people that want to get into his discography have to start. And, this is the perfect place to start. I mean, regardless of wherever you feel as if Kanye's prime is, there's no better start than the College Dropout. Everyone fucks with the College Dropout. If you don't like the College Dropout, I don't fuck with you. That just shows your character.
Yeah, but if you know. If you look at Kanye's discography, like, there's some people that don't like Yeezus. There's some people that, aren't too big on 808s. But I feel like this, along with maybe Graduation, are like 2 of his most crowd-pleasing projects. Just because, he offers something for everyone within those projects. And it's just, the diversity is amazing. The production's always going to be amazing. And, with this album, with the College Dropout, he really proved to the world that, he's more than just a producer, and that, he is one of the best all-around artists that not only hip-hop has ever seen, but the music industry has ever seen.
That's big facts. That is facts. No Kanye West, there's not a lot of shit that's going down in the future. And you know what? I mean, I like what you said about this being one of his biggest crowd pleasers with Graduation, because, they're both albums that speak to the masses and that speak to general people and that speak to everyday life. And then, you have the 2 other Kanye albums like MBDTF and Late Reg that speak to more of his, like, the diehard Kanye fans, like the ones that, like, have been listening to him for that long, that hard, and like that serious. And then after that, there's always the diverse picks like Yeezus and 808s because of the influence, and then maybe The Life of Pablo because of the newer fans and stuff like that. Ye has a lot of good mental health in it. And then there's Jesus is King, and I've never really heard anyone say that that's their favorite Kanye album, but I probably wouldn't even kill you because there's a lot of stuff.
I think
there.
It's easily his weakest. Like, I think it's night and day for me. But at the end of the day, it's still Kanye West. You're guaranteed quality with any Kanye West album, and I don't think he'll ever put something that's subpar. I want to end this off by asking one more question. What's your favorite song off of the album?
Spaceship.
Spaceship, really?
Spaceships, for sure. It's the song that sold me on the whole album. I believe the whole concept of the album once I listened to Spaceships. The first song I ever heard off of it is for sure Jesus Walks. I mean, that was probably YouTube suggested a bunch of different fucking times to me at 9 years old, so I probably went through that first. Get 'Em High was there, and then it was Spaceships. I was just like, you know what it is with Spaceships is that it kind of like, it takes you out of your own world, literally like a spaceship, and like it makes you look at it like from a bird's eye, view. It makes you understand everything that's going on, because you're like, well, okay, I'm getting treated like that too, and I'm in that situation right now while listening to this song right now, and wow, this just blew my mind type stuff. Okay, so what about yours?
I'd probably go with 2 words, just because of the way that, you know, him and Mos Def are flowing on that song, and just because that song proved to a lot of people that, you know, Kanye could actually rap. Like, he's a solid MC, and that's the one field where he gets underrated in, is his skills as a rapper.
Yeah, you think he's underrated?
100%. I mean, obviously, you know, we've seen, you know, his best rapping, I would say, earlier on in his career, off of the College Dropout, off of Late Registration, but as a pure MC, I feel like he is underrated in that field.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that discredit him because they, you know, the use of ghostwriters and all that kind of stuff. But he's just honest about it. I mean, if you understood how many people had writing teams and had that sort of stuff, I mean, dude, you're not making a #1 hit without a writing team. It's just impossible. It's like trying to build the perfect house and trying to be like the perfect person to do everything, like doing all the floors and doing all the windows and doing all the cabinets, and it has to be all perfect done by, like, it's just not worth it, you know, and you'll never get to it. So yeah, this episode was super fun, man. I love this album. It's always joy and it's always good energy when I talk about it, and I'm gonna go bump this right now actually, because it's fucking fire.
Yeah,
and
it is.
you know, guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel if you are new to us. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Lou and I are going to be covering every single drop of the year. No, I'm fucking around. Not every single drop, but most of them. We're going to be doing a lot of different reviews and a lot of different stuff. Our What to Expect series right now is doing pretty well as well. And don't forget to join our Discord server if you are a diehard NFR fan. If you've made it this far into the video and you have not known, we do have a Discord server. We talk about these types of things on the weekly, twice a week. And Lou, it's just a pleasure talking here.
Always a pleasure, man.